Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and I decided to hop back into patch 8.3 PTR to show you guys a little bit of extra content that we're going to get to do once the patch is released live. One of the biggest selling points for patch 8.3 are going to be the Whispers of Nazar, the Visions of Nazar, the horrific visions, as well as brand new assaults. So let's talk a bit about some of these assaults as well as the visions and how they correlate together, and overall what is there to do with these assaults in patch 8.3. So the two new pieces of content, the Nazar assaults as well as Nazar horrific visions, are intertied. You do the assaults in order to get access to the visions. The assaults are going to be very similar to the Legion assaults from back in the day, while the visions is going to be the new system for 8.3. That's going to be this mage tower like experience that can be done solo or with a bunch of people. And that's exactly what I want to cover in this video. The assaults as well as the visions and everything that you'll be able to do once patch 8.3 comes out. Remember that this is all still a work in progress, and Blizzard could change a lot of this in drastic ways. There's going to be a lot of balancing, there's going to be a lot of bug fixes, but they also could adjust it in many ways than I can think of. For example, right now, for the assaults, they only have 2 zones planned. Blizzard wanted to plan 2 zones that have a Titan facility, some sort of a Titan structure for the minions of Nazar to attack. But there's not only 2 Titan structures in the game, there's probably a lot more, and Blizzard could incorporate them at a later time as the PTR goes on, or maybe release them in further patches. Either way, a lot of things can change. Let's talk about the actual zones that will be invaded by these assaults, and I very much like this whenever Blizzard does this, is have us go back to some of the older areas that we would have no reason to go back to unless we want to do, let's say, old school raid and dungeon transmog farms or leveling the character through some of these areas, but we're gonna get to go back to Pandaria as well as a Cataclysm zone of Oldham. In Pandaria we go to the Vale of Eternal Springs, and there's a Titan facility under there, so of course the minions of Nazar would want to attack it. So what do these assaults look like and what can you do there? There's a variety of things to do, but for the most part there will be a bar on the right side of your screen, and you got to do all the various activities, whatever you want to do to complete it. Back in Legion, we had Legion assaults with demons, and back then you had to do like 4 or 5 world quests in order to do a final event to freeze the zone of the Legion corruption. Here instead, you get to do whatever activities you choose to do, whether it is kill powerful elites, low-level mobs that are very easy to get through, maybe even just hunt around rares, or do some side objectives like looting chests. Just about anything you want to do in these zones is really up to you, which I think is nice because it gives players that freedom of doing what you like. In these zones, they are packed with rares everywhere, and with how many models we saw on Wowhead of all the different potential mounts that we could get, I'm guessing that a lot of these rares are going to become mounts. So if you're someone who is a huge fan of farming rares in order to get all the different, let's say, pets as well as mounts and other collectibles, this is most likely what's going to be the best place to go to in 8.3. Overall, it's kind of nice to see some of the changes that Blizzard done to some of these zones. Like, it really does feel like it's an invasion. The minions of Nazar have literally set up a full-blown camp, and I love the structure. I love the color changes where things get all purple, and overall, I'm a huge fan of the environment. At the end of the actual assault itself, you get to fight the main big baddie at the end and reap your rewards, but you're not quite done with the area either. While you are in the assault, you have other dailies that will give you a variety of different resources and rewards to use for later bits of content. And we'll talk about the horrific visions that you'll be using that stuff for in just a little bit. But you have dailies to complete, and you also have other reputations to grind as well. So it is going to be a bit interesting to see what kind of different rewards you can get from these various reputations. Every one of the zones that does have this assault happening, there's also a vision of Nazar. You'll find one of the agents of Rathian guarding a pylon looking thing, and when you interact with it, you get to go inside of a vision of Nazar, which is going to give you a little bit of a taste for the horrific visions, which is this mage tower experience that Blizzard is trying to add in patch 8.3, but this is only a taste of what's it like. Once inside of the vision of Nazar, you get to interact with some of the mechanics that you will be able to face in the horrific visions. Horrific visions basically being like the big deal, while the visions of Nazar is like the minor vision of it. Inside of that vision, you'll have a bar to complete, just like in the Assault, and just about every single activity while inside lets your bar finish to completion. And once it's complete, you can exit the vision and reap the rewards. While inside of the vision of Nazar, your insanity drains over time. So the longer you stay inside, the less insanity you have to work with. Now, when I was testing this, I was on a character with full upgrades for my insanity with the legendary cloak that also does allow me to have less insanity drain over time. So I was playing a fully geared up character that was prepared to tackle these visions. However, a less experienced player, maybe someone that doesn't really know what these visions are going to be like, maybe that isn't aware of what's going to be happening, and you don't have the legendary cloak, you don't have any of the benefits, it is very likely that you might not be able to complete your vision first time around. And this is the easy vision too. Overall though, it gives you a little bit of a taste what things are going to be like, and it's a little funky while inside of that vision. For example, I don't know if it was my upgrades that were doing this, or maybe it's just what the vision does on its own, but it felt like my character was sometimes running faster, sometimes running slower, had a bunch of buffs and debuffs happening all over the place, and especially I had to watch where I step, because if I stand on anything that is purple on the ground, it just spawns more enemies on top of me. Either way, it was kind of interesting and kind of cool. While you're inside of that vision of insanity, you also can gain a bunch of bonuses. By killing the mobs inside and looting them, you can get yourself items to help you with sanity recovery, but also you can use items to give you some sanity damage at exchange of a little bit extra damage output. So you might have an easier time inside of that insanity. The main thing it does is introduces you to the concept of managing your sanity and making sure you don't kill all the way over. That you're not completely exhausted, but you're also trying to maximize the usefulness of it. I gotta say, what they've done with the zones absolutely looks amazing. Huge fan of everything that has happened so far. The Veil of Eternal Blossoms, all covered in purple, looks kind of gnarly, and even Oldham. I'm kind of glad that they're reusing Oldham again. It isn't a most popular area that we've ever used in previous expansions or any previous content in World of Warcraft, and it's only something that people have used maybe once, twice in Cataclysm if you would decide to go leveling there. But I kind of like that they are, and I love that they did this in Legion, where they let us use some of the older zones from either vanilla or even other expansions and allow those zones to stay relevant in one way or another when it comes to introducing some brand new content. I love it when Blizzard does stuff like this. The more, the merrier. Now let's talk a little bit about the horrific visions. So horrific visions is going to be the activity that you will do either solo or with a group of up to 5 people. So it's cool that it can scale, and that'll be your Mage Tower challenge mode of Battle for Azeroth. Now, I have been saying the word visions a lot, and I think this is going to be very confusing once patch 8.3 comes in. But what I talked about earlier was assaults. Then there is visions of Nazar, which are like the baby mode visions. And then there is the horrific visions, which are even stronger, even better. So I guess if you want to separate it, we'll have assaults, visions, and then horrific visions, or H visions, almost like heroic visions. So these horrific visions, H visions, or heroic visions, whichever way you want to slice it, are going to be the main bit of content for this challenge mode in Battle for Azeroth. You'll go into visions of Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and it's going to be basically like a most corrupted, most messed up version of Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and you have to fight through all these enemies, and there's certain debuffs that are happening, some cosmetic, and some that actually affect your gameplay in slight and small and weird ways, but it's all really, really cool, kind of fun, very well put together, and aesthetically looks awesome. You can enter visions, as I said earlier, anywhere between 1 to 5 people. So as a 2-man group, we actually were able to enter it together and do this activity together. Imagine if you could do Mage Tower challenges with a friend, but the Mage Tower challenge ended up scaling based on how many people were up for the challenge. I think this is a cool idea, and hopefully the reward is going to be something worth it, or something that fits the actual challenge of these visions. So far, we don't know if there's a reward at the end of it. There are a variety of rewards you can get from these visions, but hopefully there'll be something cool and cosmetic for, let's say, doing the most difficult version of it. Inside of these visions, I was able to test out the Stormwind side. And in Stormwind, you start out in the Chapel District, and very quickly on, you can actually fight the final boss of that vision. who ended up being Alaria. Now, this isn't like a future telling of what World of Warcraft future patches are going to be like. This is simply just showing you the most messed up version of the Stormwind. What if they were invaded by visions of N'Zoth and the Void, and Alaria basically went crazy? That I don't think it's supposed to be foreshadowing anything for future expansions, although it of course could. Anyway, you can just enter and you can kill Alaria. And once you kill Alaria, the horrific vision is over. You get to reap your rewards, and depending on how far you went into your vision, you'll get a variety of different chests. Now, it might seem a little bit weird that you can end the vision and beat it that quickly just by killing the final boss. So there must be a caveat. So we went back into the horrific visions and we see that there's other districts that have a little bit of purple around them, like the trade district as well as the dwarven district. Then there's the old town, which looks extra spooky, and the mage district. So the way that it works, at least that's how we figured out, is you are supposed to enter these visions, and yes, you can take the easy route to kill the boss, but you'll get the minimum amount of rewards. The further you enter, the further you go into the actual horrors of the nightmare that is going to be these horrific visions, the stronger the mobs become, the worse the debuffs become, but then the rewards at the end are going to be even better. So we decided to go and check out Trade District. From there we were able to save one of the heroes of the Alliance. I don't really play Alliance, so I don't really know the character names by heart or anything. I probably should have done the Orgrimmar side, because at least I know all the enemies and all the allies, and I guess the lore a little bit better from the BFA side. But you get to free one of the heroes of the Alliance, and he's like the commander that sits on a ship all the time. To free him, we had to venture into the Trade District, and for his activity, we had to free the whole zone off of minions of N'Zoth and open all the cages containing prisoners of Stormwind. Also, while inside of that zone in particular, we got a debuff that we've never seen before. Every time we are in combat, as long as we are in combat, we get a debuff stacking against us, which basically makes our character's skin crawl, and at 5 stacks, it forces our character to run unstoppably. So if your character starts running forward while you're doing one of these visions, there's a good chance there's some sort of affliction bothering your character. To clear that affliction, you have to jump. So while in combat from time to time, you actually just have to jump around a little bit in order to clear yourself off of debuffs. Otherwise, your character would just start running forward randomly. And that can be a little bit surprising, but it's not the worst kind of debuff ever. But the further you venture into these visions, if you go into the really spooky zones like the Mage District and the Old Town, the debuffs there are supposed to be even stronger, but we didn't really get that much time in order to test this quite yet. Some parts work, some parts don't. Haven't been able to test out the really spooky sides and see what debuffs those offer. After hitting up Trade District, we decided to go into the Dwarven District. There we were able to put up satchel charges all over the Dwarven District, pull the plug, and fight the mini-boss of that area. He has slightly different mechanics than the first mini-boss. This one drops down massive sticks of dynamite, and that creates fire in an area where we cannot stand. So you have to move him around constantly. Not super challenging mini-boss, but definitely was interesting and new. Either way, we were able to venture in both of those zones before we realized that our sanity is running low. While inside of horrific visions, the further you venture, the more sanity you lose over time. That's kind of like the biggest caveat to all these things. So you have to act fast. You have to plan accordingly which zones you want to hit and how fast you want to go from one zone into the next, You have to be aware of the challenges you're going to be doing, the mini bosses, how to tackle these mini bosses, and how to get through those zones as quickly as possible without losing your sanity. However, for your group, or if you're doing the solo, you do get 3 orbs of sanity restoration, although they kind of bug out sometimes and we only get 2 uses out of them. So after we got 2 zones done, we decided to sprint back and try to see if we could tackle on Alaria again. As you unlock and do more parts of the horrific visions, the boss, the end boss, actually gets stronger. Not only did Alaria have more health, 10% per zone that we were able to finish, and I would believe maybe like 15% for some of the spookier zones, but now she also has different abilities. So the first time we killed Alaria, she had like a couple of abilities. She had a frontal, where she would do some splash damage, and she had an ability that she had to line of sight from, otherwise it could be a one-shot. But now she has more abilities. Not only does Alaria get the hook ability from the first mini-boss that silences you and pulls you to her, but she also drops dynamite on the ground, which, just like the second mini-boss, does a lot of fire damage, and just like the second mini-boss, sets a certain portion of an area on fire. While you're fighting inside of the chapel, it doesn't really give you a lot of room to play around, so you have to be very careful in how you move Alaria. Plus, she is also a ranged character, so it has to be all about line of sight with her, but you have to line of sight most of her abilities anyway, so she's really kind of annoying to move around. Either way, it gave us a little bit of an idea what these visions are going to be like if you were to venture further in. You would fight tougher enemies, you would fight tougher afflictions, and the whole point behind these visions is to go through all these sectors as fast as you can, as efficiently as you can, whether you do it solo, whether you do it in a group with friends, and finally you gotta encounter the final boss that is fully beefed up with all these different abilities, with all this extra health that becomes far deadlier. You are also somewhat timed while you're inside of these horrific visions. The longer you stay inside of horrific visions, the more sanity you lose over time. And the further you venture into horrific visions, like we just ventured into the light purple areas like the Trade District and the Dwarven District, if we were to go to the Mage Tower where it was really spooky and kind of, really void infested, I'm pretty sure we would lose our insanity even faster there. So you are kind of sort of soft timed. You do have certain abilities you can use in order to replenish your sanity, but you can only do it a limited amount of time. And for us, we were even more limited because one of our sanity reduction or sanity replenishment abilities actually bugged out the third time when we have maximum 3 usages of it. So we were trying to min-max it, and we were very much running low on sanity for most of the duration. But the further you go, the better the rewards are going to be at the end of the run. Some of the rewards, which I'm pretty sure are not finalized, you have items you can use to turn in order to buy yourself better gear. For example, let's say you're trying to gear up a character. They have your Azerite pieces, which I'm pretty sure will have specific new Azerite traits. You have a bit of catch-up gear that you can use for transmog, but also it has a fairly decent item level. And you can basically buy yourself a item level 455 piece of loot. Pretty great if you got a character that needs a catch-up, or maybe if you got a character that does need a good piece of upgrade for gear early on without having to set your foot inside of a raid. But I'm pretty sure Blizzard is going to add more cosmetic stuff. If they really want to make it a full Mage Tower experience, they have to have some cool cosmetic at the end of it to show off to everybody. Whether it is a brand new weapon, maybe a whole new transmog, maybe it could be just a skin for one of our Azerite essences. Anything would be cool to see. Also, inside of those horrific visions, you get yourself currency in order to upgrade other aspects that help you stay inside of the visions longer. For example, inside of Heart of Azeroth in patch 8.3, you have a console that you can invest these points into that you get from doing visions and the assaults and basically anything that has to do with Nazar. You get all this currency. You can invest that currency so you can stay in visions a little bit longer, get various buffs while you're in visions, and maybe slow your insanity drain. Together with the legendary cloak questline that you'll be able to do with Rathium, which also supposed to slow down the amount of insanity that gets drained. Together, both of these systems are gonna work to keep you inside of these visions longer. Hopefully this will be one of those activities where a skilled player without any upgrades can get through the visions very quickly, very efficiently, and hopefully it won't be super tied to having all the upgrades before you can finish the whole thing. And hopefully the upgrades will simply function to make it easier so that more players can maybe venture inside and complete the visions themselves. Overall, this is a really just bare bones look at this new features that we have for patch 8.3. Hopefully I gave you guys a little bit of information of everything you need to know for what these visions are going to be like. Overall, very new bit of content. We've never seen anything like this, or never really seen it in that kind of style, so it was very overwhelming to look at the first time around. I'm pretty sure this isn't the finalized product, so hopefully Blizzard will have something more finalized closer to the release of 8.3. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about the assaults as well as the horrific visions. What do you think about them? What are your first few, impressions of this bit of content for 8.3? Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.